The air was thick. It wasn't just the humidity, it was smoke and something else, something I now know was pure fear. It was a smell that stuck to the back of your throat. Hiding in the dark, crammed between sacks of rice in the back of a pickup, the engine groaning over rubble. All I could think, the one thought looping in my 16-year-old brain was, I am not going to make it home. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. We came here to help. I never imagined our mission of hope would turn into a fight for my own life. But to understand how I ended up there, how our family trip spiraled into that moment of terror, we have to go back a week. Back to a different world, when our journey began with so much hope and so much naivety. It all started, like a lot of things do, around the dinner table in our quiet, comfortable house. The year was 2010. My life was a simple rhythm of high school, soccer practice, and worrying about things that seem laughably small now. My world was safe. Then, on January 12th, that world cracked open. A 7.0 magnitude earthquake had just hit Haiti, a country I could barely point to on a map. The news was a constant, horrific loop. It wasn't just numbers. It was an avalanche of apocalyptic images. Buildings pancaked into dust. Streets choked with debris. The scale of it was staggering, almost impossible to wrap your head around. An estimated 300,000 people dead. Hundreds of thousands more injured. Over 1.5 million people were suddenly homeless, living in a landscape of ruin. One night, my mom, a registered nurse with a heart bigger than our house, was watching a report from Port-au-Prince. The screen showed a makeshift clinic, doctors working by flashlight, the wounded lying on sheets in the dust. She just shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with a sadness I'd never seen in her before. "We have to do something," she whispered. And when my mom said something like that, it wasn't a suggestion. It was a fact. My dad, a general contractor who could build or fix anything, looked at her, then at the TV, and just nodded. He was a man of few words, but deep conviction. The decision was made. Our family was going to Haiti. The whole thing was organized through our church. The plan was thrown together fast, fueled by goodwill and a sense of urgency. My dad would lead a small team to help with demolition. My mom would volunteer at any clinic that would take her. And my brother and I, we were teenagers. We were told we'd help. Carry things, hand out supplies, play with the kids. The details were fuzzy, painted in broad, idealistic strokes. I remember our living room floor being covered in lists and piles of supplies. Mosquito nets, water purification tablets, first aid kits, protein bars. It felt like we were preparing for some extreme camping trip. There was a buzz of excitement, a sense of purpose that lit up our quiet home. To me, it was an adventure. I was going to miss 2 weeks of school and come back with a story that would beat anyone's trip to the beach. I had this movie montage in my head, me handing water to a grateful child, my dad clearing rubble like a superhero, my mom saving lives. We were the heroes. Of course, there was fear mixed in. We were warned about the instability, the aftershocks, the diseases. But it was an abstract fear, like the feeling you get before riding a roller coaster. It wasn't real yet. Our research was all about the humanitarian crisis, not the security situation on the ground. We read that the government had fallen apart and that thousands of prisoners had escaped when the national penitentiary collapsed. But those were just facts, footnotes in our grand, heroic story. We were so naive. It's painful to look back on. We were a family of 4 from the Pacific Northwest. My mother, my brother, and I all had blonde hair and fair skin. We were going to stand out, not just as foreigners, but as symbols of a world that hadn't been shattered. We were so focused on what we could bring, our skills, our supplies, our good intentions, that we never really thought about what could be taken from us. We thought our motives were a shield, that just by wanting to help, we'd be safe. We thought we were ready. We had no idea. The descent into Port-au-Prince was the first sign that our fantasy was about to collide with reality. From the airplane window, the devastation was absolute. It looked like a giant had slammed a fist into the city, over and over again. Entire neighborhoods were just gone, replaced by gray fields of pulverized concrete and twisted metal. What we'd seen on the news was just a glimpse. This was total collapse. The moment we stepped out of the tiny airport, it all hit us like a physical blow. The air was the first thing. It was a heavy blanket of dust, diesel fumes, charcoal smoke, and underneath it all, a sweet, sickly smell of decay that your brain tries to ignore. The heat was suffocating, a wet, oppressive weight that made your clothes stick to you instantly. And the noise, a constant roar of shouting, horns, generators, and a low hum of human misery. A man named Jean-Paul, our local contact, met us. He had kind, tired eyes that had seen too much. He herded us into a battered Toyota Land Cruiser, and our real education began. There were no rules on the road. Our car just became part of a chaotic river of traffic, weaving around mountains of rubble and crowds of people walking with a dazed look on their faces. We saw men on rooftops, slowly breaking down what was left of their homes with sledgehammers. We saw women balancing impossible loads on their heads, navigating the broken streets with a grace that didn't fit the chaos around them. And everywhere, there were tent cities. Sprawling camps of tarps and bedsheets in parks, on soccer fields, anywhere there was open space. Thousands of people whose entire lives were now just a few square feet of dirt. I sat pressed against the window, trying to process it all. This wasn't a movie. These weren't extras. These were people whose lives had been destroyed. My adventure suddenly felt disgusting. My self-image as some kind of hero was dissolving, replaced by the humbling realization that I was just a tourist in their tragedy. The moment our mission truly shifted from hope to survival wasn't some big, dramatic event. It was a quiet comment from Jean-Paul. As we drove down a crowded street, a group of young men watched our truck pass. Their stares weren't curious. They were hard, calculating. My dad, being friendly, gave a little wave. The men didn't react. Jean-Paul glanced in the rearview mirror, his face tight. "Do not do that, please," he said in a low voice. "Do not draw attention to them. You are not here to help. You are an opportunity." His words just hung there in the hot air. An opportunity. Not helpers. An opportunity. It was the first time the abstract danger we'd been warned about felt real and personal. Our little bubble of good intentions popped, leaving us exposed to the raw, unsettling truth. We were vulnerable. Our visibility wasn't an asset. It was a liability. We spent the first few days at the compound in a blur of hard labor. My dad and brother cleared debris from a collapsed school. My mom, frustrated, found the makeshift clinics so overwhelmed that her main job was cleaning wounds and giving comfort care, a world away from the life-saving work she'd imagined. I was assigned to the supply warehouse, a sweltering tin-roofed building where we packed kits of rice, beans, and oil. The work was exhausting, but it was tangible. Each bag was a meal for a family. It was a way to keep my mind from spiraling, to focus on the task and ignore the growing unease in my stomach. The nights were the hardest. After the generator shut off at 10 p.m., the darkness was total. The night had its own unnerving soundtrack, dogs barking, distant shouting, and sometimes sharp, sudden sounds that made you freeze. One night, I was on a cot on the veranda when I was jolted awake by a series of sharp cracks. Pop, pop, pop. It was close. Too close. Another volunteer, a former soldier, hissed from the darkness. "Get down. That's gunfire." My blood ran cold. I rolled onto the concrete floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear my parents scrambling in the next room, my mom frantically whispering my name. I lay there, face down on the dusty concrete, completely helpless. The shooting lasted maybe a minute, but it felt like an eternity. When it stopped, the silence that followed was even more terrifying. In that silence, I finally understood. We weren't in control here. We were fragile, and we were a very, very long way from home. A few days later, my mom was asked to go with a small team to a mobile clinic in Site Soleil, one of the most notorious slums in Port-au-Prince. I begged to go. I couldn't stand another day in the warehouse and wanted to feel useful again. My parents reluctantly agreed, but only if I didn't leave my mother's side. The drive into Site Soleil was like descending into another level of hell. The poverty was absolute. But amidst the squalor, there was life, vibrant and defiant. As our truck slowed down in a crowded market, we saw a fight break out between two men. It started with shouting, then shoving. Within seconds, a crowd formed, and then one of the men pulled out a machete. The sunlight glinted off the long, curved blade. Our driver, Samuel, slammed the truck into reverse and swung us into an alley without a word. My heart was pounding. The image of that blade was burned into my mind. Samuel just shook his head. "A fight over nothing," he said grimly. "It happens all the time." The casualness of the violence was somehow more shocking than the violence itself. On the way back, something happened that would haunt me in a different way. Our truck was flagged down. A small group was gathered around a woman lying on a blanket. She was in labor. The nearest clinic was miles away. She wouldn't make it. My mom was out of the truck in a second. There, on a dusty, garbage-strewn roadside, surrounded by the ruins of a city, a new life was entering the world. My mom had no equipment, just her hands and her knowledge. I was told to hold a flashlight, but my hand was shaking so badly I could barely keep the beam steady. I watched as my mother, using broken Creole and gestures, guided this woman through childbirth. And then I saw the baby, a tiny, perfect human, taking its first breath in a world of chaos. In that moment, amidst all the death, there was this fierce act of creation. My mom wrapped the baby in a clean cloth and handed him to his mother. The look of pure love on that woman's face is something I will never forget. It was a flicker of beauty in an ocean of despair. But it was also a stark reminder of how fragile life was here. That week had stripped away my idealism, layer by layer, leaving behind a raw and terrified awareness. I thought I'd seen the worst of it. I was wrong. The day it all happened was our last scheduled day of work. A sense of relief was finally starting to creep in. We had survived. We had one more supply run to an isolated camp on the outskirts of a city. My father was in the lead truck with the supplies. I was in the second truck with my mother, Jean-Paul, and our driver, Samuel. The distribution itself was calm. People lined up patiently. A little girl, no older than 5, reached out and touched my blonde hair with a look of wonder on her face. I smiled at her, and for a second, the fear I'd been carrying all week faded. It felt like the connection I'd come here seeking. Our mistake was delaying. A few families arrived late, and Jean-Paul, with his big heart, insisted we give them the last of our supplies. By the time we were ready to go, my father's truck was just a speck of dust in the distance. We were alone. About 10 minutes down the road, Samuel slowed the truck. A beat-up sedan was parked sideways, blocking the narrow dirt path. 2 men were leaning against it. As we got closer, a third man got out. They didn't seem to have guns, but they carried themselves with an unnerving confidence. They just watched us approach. "This is not good," Jean-Paul said, his voice tight. He told Samuel to try and go around. As he did, the 3 men moved in unison to block our path. They were smiling, but their eyes were cold. Jean-Paul rolled his window down a few inches and called out in Creole. I didn't understand the words, but the tone was calm. One of the men, the leader, walked slowly to the window. He spoke quickly, gesturing to the back of our truck, and then directly at me. My stomach dropped. My mother grabbed my hand, her grip so tight it hurt. "What does he want?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jean-Paul kept talking to the man, his voice steady, but a muscle was twitching in his jaw. The man outside laughed, a short, sharp sound with no humor in it. He pointed at me again, then at himself, and made a gesture like putting a ring on a finger. "He wants to know what we have," Jean-Paul translated, his eyes fixed on the man. "He is also making a proposal." "A proposal for what?" my mom demanded. Jean-Paul's silence was the answer. "He is proposing marriage," he said finally, his voice flat. "For the girl. For you." He glanced at me, and the fear in his eyes terrified me more than the man outside. "He says a white wife, a blonde wife, is a very valuable thing. He wants to negotiate a price." The world went sideways. This wasn't a robbery. I wasn't a person to them. I was a commodity, a blonde-haired prize to be claimed. I shrank back in my seat, my mind just screaming, "This can't be happening." Samuel began speaking urgently in Creole, pleading. The leader just shook his head, still smiling that dead-eyed smile. He tried Jean-Paul's door.
Locked.
He and his friends walked to the back of the truck and started trying to open the tailgate. "Drive," my mother whispered. "Samuel, just drive." "We cannot," Jean-Paul said, his voice strained. "If we provoke them, they will have weapons." The men started banging on the side of the truck.
Boom.
The sound vibrated right through my bones. They were shouting. One of them picked up a large rock.
Time slowed down.
I could see dust dancing in the slivers of sunlight. I could feel my mom's fingernails digging into my arm. I thought about my dad up ahead, totally unaware. My room at home, my dog. That life felt like it belonged to someone else. The man with the rock slammed it against the window, right next to my head. A spiderweb of cracks erupted across the glass, but it held. I screamed. A raw, animal sound of pure terror. That's when my mother snapped. She was a nurse, a gentle soul. But in that moment, something primal took over. She lunged across me and slammed her hand down on the horn. A single, deafening blast shattered the air. She just held it there, her entire body shaking. The sudden noise startled the men. They hesitated, distracted, looking back toward the main road. It was the opening Samuel needed. He stomped on the accelerator. The Land Cruiser shot forward, straight at their car. There was a sickening crunch of metal as we rammed it, shoving it sideways. For a terrifying second, the engine screamed, and I thought we were stuck. Then with a lurch, our tires caught, and we were through. We flew down that dirt road. I risked a look back and saw the men standing there, getting smaller and smaller, shaking their fists. No one spoke. The only sound was my mother's ragged sobs and the rattle of the cracked window. We didn't stop until the gates of our compound were in sight. We were safe. But the naive girl who wanted an adventure was gone forever. I understood now how quickly safety can disappear. I had looked into the face of a danger I never knew existed, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I had almost not come back. The second we passed through the compound gates, the adrenaline vanished, and a deep, shuddering cold took its place. Samuel rested his forehead on the steering wheel, his shoulders trembling. My father and brother came running out, their faces confused until they saw the truck. My dad wrenched my door open. "What happened? Are you okay?" I couldn't speak. I just fell into his arms, shaking uncontrollably. The story came out in fragments, a jumble of my mother's tears and Jean-Paul's quiet, horrified account. As my dad listened, his face transformed. The easygoing man I knew disappeared, replaced by someone with a cold fury in his eyes. The decision was immediate. We were leaving. Not the next day.
Now.
The next hour was a frantic blur. Our mission was over. Survival was the only thing that mattered. While my dad and Jean-Paul made urgent calls to arrange a flight, we threw our things into our bags. I caught my reflection in a mirror. My face was pale, streaked with dirt and tears. My eyes looked hollow. Packing to leave felt so different from packing to come. The excitement was gone, replaced by a desperate need to escape. Every shout from outside the walls made me jump. The compound that had felt like a prison now felt like the only safe place on Earth, and we were about to leave it. The guilt was suffocating. We were running. We had the privilege of escape. We could buy a plane ticket and fly away, back to our safe world. The people here, the little girl who touched my hair, the new mother on the side of the road, Jean-Paul, Samuel, they couldn't leave. This chaos was their daily reality. Our week of terror was their lifetime. I felt like a coward, but the fear was stronger. The ride back to the airport was the longest of my life. I stared at the floor of the truck, my body coiled like a spring, replaying the attack over and over. Arriving at the airport felt like reaching a sanctuary. It was an island of order in a sea of chaos, filled with soldiers, aid workers, and journalists. Seeing the uniformed U.S. military personnel was a jarring sight, but their presence was a comfort, a symbol of the structure I desperately craved. We said our goodbyes to Jean-Paul and Samuel at the curb. My dad pressed a thick wad of American cash into each of their hands. They tried to refuse. "For your families," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you. For my daughter." Jean-Paul looked at me, his weary eyes full of a deep sorrow. "I am so sorry," he said. "This is not Haiti. The real Haiti is buried under all this." I just nodded, unable to speak. Walking into the terminal was like entering another dimension. Air conditioning, people complaining about delayed flights, buying overpriced water. It was so bizarrely normal. Just hours ago, my life was on the line.
Now I was in a security line.
On the flight, I pressed my forehead against the cool plastic of the window as we took off, watching the broken city of Port-au-Prince shrink below. I didn't feel relief, just emptiness. The plane climbed, and soon the gray ruins were hidden by a blanket of white clouds. Just like that, it was gone. But I knew it was still there. And a part of me was still there, too, trapped in the back of that truck on a dusty, terrifying road. Arriving home was the strangest part of it all. We walked through our front door, and everything was exactly as we had left it. The house was clean, quiet, safe. It was so achingly normal that it felt completely alien. The first few weeks back were a shock. The world I'd left behind no longer fit. My friends' concerns about who was dating whom, or what to wear to a dance, seemed absurd. How could I talk about a math test when I had the image of a man with a machete burned into my mind? A car backfiring sent panic through me. I slept with a light on for months. I felt completely alone, isolated by an experience I couldn't explain. That week changed me in ways I'm still figuring out. It shattered my simple worldview. I saw that in places of extreme desperation, the lines between good and bad get blurry. The men who threatened us were a product of a system that had been broken for generations, their desperation inflamed by a catastrophe. Their actions were terrifying and unforgivable, but I came to understand they stemmed from a place of profound powerlessness. It also gave me a deep, uncomfortable understanding of my own privilege. My passport, my skin color, these were all currencies. To those men, my whiteness was a prize. To the soldiers at the airport, it was a reason to protect me. The fact that I could simply fly away from the danger is a privilege, so immense it's staggering. But this isn't just a story about trauma. It's also about what survives in spite of it. I saw the worst of humanity that week, but I also saw the best. I saw the quiet dignity of people who had lost everything. I saw the fierce love of a mother for her newborn child. I saw the courage of men like Jean-Paul and Samuel, who faced danger every single day to help their own people. I saw resilience in its rawest form. The girl who went to Haiti was idealistic and naive. The person who came back was broken in some ways, but she was also rebuilt into someone stronger and more empathetic. The world was no longer a safe, predictable place, but it was a much bigger, more complex, and more intensely human one. My experience was just one terrifying thread in a vast, complicated tapestry. I went there to help, but in the end, it was Haiti that taught me a fundamental truth. The line between safety and chaos is terrifyingly thin. This story has stayed with me for over a decade and has profoundly shaped who I am. It's a reminder that travel doesn't just show you the world, it shows you your place in it, sometimes in the most challenging ways. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing. I want to share more stories about how the world can change us, challenge us, and connect us in ways we never thought possible. I don't regret going. I regret our naivety. I regret that my family was put in danger. But I don't regret what I saw. The fear has faded over the years, but the images of resilience haven't. The face of the mother holding her newborn baby, the quiet dignity in the food line, the weary but unwavering kindness of Jean-Paul, those are the images that have truly stayed with me. They're a permanent reminder that even in the deepest darkness, humanity has a stubborn, beautiful way of finding the light.